Claire stood alone on the broken ridge of Mount Vera, where the wind carried ash instead of snow. The sun had not shone clearly over Eldros in many weeks. Thick clouds of smoke and dust hung low in the sky, hiding the stars and dimming the moon. Once this land had been green and bright with silver trees and singing rivers. Now it was silent except for the distant hum of machines that did not belong. Her long silver hair was tied back with a strip of old cloth. Her eyes were sharp and tired, the color of storm clouds. She wore armor made from the bones of ancient beasts and lined with woven moonleaf. It was light but strong. At her side rested a curved blade that glowed faintly blue when danger neared. She did not draw it now but kept her hand near the hilt. She always did. Behind her in the shadow of the ruined temple lay Virel. The dragon was not large by elder standards but already strong for his age. His scales shimmered like wet stone under the dull light. His wings were folded tight against his body, and his tail curled around a small stone chest. That chest held the last of Eldros's memory. Inside were scrolls of star maps, songs of creation, and the final words of the High Council before the Devourers came. Virel lifted his head and let out a low rumble. Claire turned. She did not need words to understand him. He sensed movement far below in the valley. Something was coming. She moved quickly but quietly down the slope. Her boots made no sound on the cracked stone. She reached a high perch and looked out over the land. In the distance, black shapes crawled across the earth like insects. They were Devourer scouts, tall and thin with limbs that bent in too many places. Their bodies were made of dark metal and living shadow. They left no tracks but burned the ground as they passed. Claire watched them for a long time. They moved in patterns, circling old ruins and scanning the land with strange devices that pulsed red light. They were searching. They had been searching for weeks. They wanted the archive. They wanted the heart of Eldros. She turned and walked back to Virel. He stood as she approached and nudged her hand with his snout. She placed her palm on his forehead and closed her eyes. Warmth passed between them. Their bond was old even if their lives were short. He had hatched under her care when the first Devourer ships broke through the sky wall. Since then they had run, hidden, and fought, always together. "We cannot stay here much longer," she said in the old tongue. The words were soft and carried no sound, but Virel understood. He blinked slowly and lowered his head. He knew it too. That night they packed what little they had. Claire wrapped the chest in a cloak made from dragonhide. It would hide its magic from scanners. She checked her blade and her belt of herbs and powders. Virel ate the last of their dried meat and drank from a hidden spring that still ran clear beneath the rocks. Before dawn they left the temple. Claire walked and Virel flew low above her, staying under the cloud cover. They moved toward the western wastes where few dared to go. It was a land of broken glass and dead rivers. The Devourers avoided it because the ground was unstable and full of old traps left by elven mages long gone. For 3 days they traveled without rest. On the 4th morning, Claire saw smoke rising in the distance. Not the black smoke of Devourer fires, but white and thin. Someone was alive out here. She signaled Virel to stay back and crept forward alone. Behind a ridge of black stone, she saw a small camp. 2 figures huddled near a fire. They were elves, but not from her clan. Their clothes were torn and their faces marked with grief. One held a broken staff. The other clutched a child no older than 5. Claire stepped into the open. The elves gasped and reached for weapons that were not there. She raised her hand to show she meant no harm. "I am Claire of the High Sentinel," she said. "Are you from the southern groves?" The older elf nodded slowly. "We fled when the spire fell. We thought we were the last." "You are not," she said, "but you cannot stay here. The Devourers track heat and sound. Your fire will bring them." The woman looked at the child and then at Claire with desperate eyes. "Where can we go?" Claire hesitated. She had no safe place to offer. But she could not leave them. She turned and whistled softly. From the sky, Virel descended in a rush of wind and folded wings. The elves stared in awe. Dragons had not been seen in the wild for generations. "He will carry you," she said. "We go to the Echo Caves. It is far but hidden. If we move fast, we may reach it before they notice." The elves agreed without question. Virel let them climb onto his back with gentle care. Claire led the way on foot. They moved through narrow canyons and under fallen bridges. The land grew colder and the air thinner. By the 2nd night, they reached the mouth of the Echo Caves. It was a deep crack in the earth that twisted for miles underground. No machine could follow them here. Inside the caves, the walls glowed with soft blue moss. The air smelled of damp stone and old magic. Claire found a chamber with a clear pool and dry ground. They rested there. The child slept curled against Virel's side. The dragon kept watch with half-closed eyes. Claire sat by the pool and unwrapped the chest. She opened it and took out a small crystal orb. When she held it, the orb lit up with tiny points of light. It was a star map, but not of this world. It showed paths between worlds, lines of travel that the ancients used long ago. One line led far beyond the known stars to a place called Sol. She had heard stories of Sol, a young race of beings who walked without magic, but built great ships of steel and fire. They had sent messages across the void many years ago. The High Council had debated answering, but chose silence. They feared what lay beyond their sky. Now Claire wondered if that silence had doomed them. She looked at the sleeping elves and then at Virel. He met her gaze and gave a soft puff of smoke. She knew what she had to do. The next morning she gave the woman a small vial of healing water and a map carved on bone. "Stay here," she said. "Do not light fires. Do not speak above a whisper. I will return if I can." "Where are you going?" the woman asked. "To find help," she said. "If any still exists." She left the caves alone. Virel followed silently behind. They climbed back to the surface and faced the empty sky. Claire took out a small device from her belt. It was old and cracked, but still worked. It was a signal stone. It could send a pulse through the veil between worlds. It had never been used. The council feared it would attract the wrong kind of attention. Now there was nothing left to lose. She placed the stone on a flat rock and spoke the activation words. The stone glowed red, then white, then blue. A sound like a bell rang out across the land, but no one heard it except those who listened with more than ears. For hours she waited. Nothing came. No ships, no voices, no sign. She sat down and leaned against Virel. Maybe the stories were wrong. Maybe Sol was gone too. Maybe all hope was dust. Then something changed. High above the clouds, a flicker of light appeared. Not a star. Not a meteor. It moved wrong. It blinked in a pattern. 3 short, then 2 long. Claire stood up fast. Virel raised his head and his eyes narrowed. The signal was answered, but it was not elven. The light grew brighter. Then more lights joined it. Dozens of them, forming a shape. A fleet. They were not sleek and silver like elven skyships. They were blocky and dark with sharp edges. They burned with engines that roared like thunder. They came from the void between stars and they bore no mark she knew. Virel growled low in his throat. Claire placed a hand on his neck to calm him. She did not know if this was rescue or another kind of doom, but one thing was clear. Someone had heard, and they had come. She watched as the first ship broke through the cloud layer. It was huge and covered in scars. Its hull bore the marks of many battles. On its side was a symbol she did not recognize. A circle with lines like rays of sun. Humans, the word came to her from old texts. Beings of flesh and fire, builders of cities that reached the sky. Fighters who did not use magic but made their own power from the heart of atoms. They had come all this way. For her. For Eldros. For a world they had never seen. Claire took a deep breath. She did not know if they could be trusted. She did not know if they would understand what was at stake. But she knew one thing. They thought no help would come. But it did. And now she had to decide what to do next. Morgan Tate sat alone in the dim glow of the comms bay, aboard the deep scout vessel Persephone. The ship hummed softly around her, a steady rhythm of engines and life support. Outside the viewport, stars stretched into endless black. It had been 6 weeks since they left the Sol system, and 3 days since they entered the dead zone, a region of space where signals vanished and sensors gave false readings. Morgan was not supposed to be on this mission. She was a linguist, not a soldier. But when the first strange signal came through the long-range array, no one else could make sense of it. It was not machine code. It was not any known alien dialect. It sounded like singing, but with patterns too precise for music. It rose and fell in waves that matched no natural frequency. She had spent nights replaying the fragment over and over. At first it seemed random. Then she noticed the pauses. The silences were not empty. They held shape. Like breath between words. Like the space between heartbeats. On the 4th night, she realized it was a call for help. She brought her findings to Captain Ellis. He was a hard man with tired eyes and a voice like gravel. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, he leaned back and stared at the ceiling for a long time. "You think it is real?" he said. "I know it is," she replied. He rubbed his chin. "We have no orders to go off course. The fleet is stretched thin. The Devourers hit Titan Colony last week. Thousands gone." "I know," she said. "But if this is a new civilization, If they are under attack too, we might be the only ones who can reach them. He looked at her then. Not as a junior officer, but as someone who saw something others missed. All right, he said. We take the Persephone, we go dark. No broadcasts, no idents. If it is a trap, we vanish without a trace. If it is real, we see what we can do. That was 2 days ago. Now the ship drifted near the edge of a broken system. Scans showed one planet still holding an atmosphere. Eldros. Once lush, now scarred. Cities were gone. Forests were ash. But something lived down there. Heat signatures. Faint but steady. Morgan stood and walked to the main deck. The crew moved quietly. Tension hung in the air. They all knew this was not a normal recon. Captain Ellis stood by the nav console. He nodded when he saw her. We are picking up movement on the surface, he said. One life form. Maybe two. Large dragon, she said without thinking. He raised an eyebrow. In the signal, she explained. There was a word that repeated. Virel. In old Earth myths, dragons were guardians, protectors. I think it is not a myth here. He did not laugh. He had learned not to doubt her. Prepare the shuttle, he said. You will go down. I want eyes on the ground. She nodded. Her hands shook, but she hid it. An hour later, she stood in the shuttle bay wearing a light enviro suit. It was not armor, but it would keep her alive if the air turned bad. Her sidearm was holstered, but she hoped not to use it. She carried a small pack with med supplies, rations, and a universal translator. The shuttle dropped through the thick clouds. The ride was rough. Lightning flashed in the distance. Below them, the land looked dead. Cracked earth. Black rivers. Ruins that leaned like broken teeth. They landed in a clearing near a ridge. The ramp lowered with a hiss. Morgan stepped out. The air was cold and smelled of burnt stone. She activated her wrist scanner. The life signs were close. Very close, then she saw her. A woman stood on a high rock, tall and lean with silver hair tied back. Her clothes were strange. Part cloth, part bone, but her eyes were sharp and clear. At her side crouched a creature that made Morgan freeze. It was a dragon, not a fossil, not a dream, real. Its scales caught the dull light and shimmered like wet stone. Its eyes glowed faintly gold. It watched her with intelligence. Morgan raised her hand slowly.
She did not speak.
She let the translator hum softly in the air between them. The woman did not move for a long time. Then she stepped down from the rock. The dragon followed but stayed a few paces behind. Morgan saw the small chest strapped to its side. It pulsed with a soft blue light. You are not devourers, the woman said. Her voice was low and calm. Morgan shook her head. No, we are human. From Saul, the woman studied her face. You heard the call? Yes. Why? Because it sounded like someone was drowning in silence. The woman's eyes softened just a little. Her name is Claire, she said. I am the last sentinel of Eldros. Morgan introduced herself. Morgan Tate, United Earth Fleet. Claire looked past her at the shuttle. You came alone, just the shuttle. The Persephone is hidden in orbit. Good. They watch the skies. Who are they? The Devourers. They came from beyond the rim. They do not speak. They only take. They drain the life from worlds. From magic. From memory. Morgan did not understand magic, but she understood loss. She had seen Titan Colony's last transmission. Children screaming. Buildings falling. Silence after. We are fighting them too, she said. Claire looked surprised. Your world is far from here. Not far enough. A long silence passed. Wind moved through the ruins. Virel shifted and let out a soft sound like a sigh. You should not have come, Claire said. It is too dangerous. We could not ignore a voice in the dark. Claire turned and looked at the dragon. He lowered his head. She walked to him and placed a hand on his neck. Then she looked back at Morgan. Come, she said, before they find you. They walked to a hidden path behind the ridge. It led down into a canyon and then into a cave system. The walls glowed with soft blue moss. The air grew warmer. Deep inside, they reached a chamber with a clear pool and dry ground. 2 elves sat near the water, a woman and a small child. They looked up with fear in their eyes. These are survivors, Claire said. From the southern groves, Morgan nodded. She set down her pack and took out a nutrient bar. She offered it to the child. The woman hesitated, then let the child take it. For hours they sat in quiet. Morgan used her scanner to check the air and water. Both were safe. She shared some of her rations. Claire watched her every move but said nothing. As night fell, Claire spoke again. "Why did you come alone?" "Because if I came with soldiers, you would have seen us as a threat. I came as one person, not a fleet. You are brave or foolish, maybe both." Claire almost smiled. It was the first time Morgan saw something like hope in her eyes. "Tell me about your people," Morgan said. "We were keepers," Claire said. "We tended the balance between sky and stone, between life and memory. We did not build weapons. We built songs. We thought the universe would respect that. It did not." "No." Morgan looked at Viral. He lay near the pool with his eyes half closed. "Can I ask him something?" Claire nodded. Morgan moved slowly. She stopped a few feet away. Viral opened one eye. "In old stories on Earth, dragons were wise. Were you born to fight?" Viral made a sound like a low purr. Then he lifted his head and looked at Claire. "He says he was born to protect," she translated. "Not to fight. But if he must, he will burn the sky." Morgan believed her. Later that night, Morgan played the signal fragment from her wrist unit. Claire listened with her eyes closed. When it ended, she whispered the words back in her own tongue. "It is a plea," she said. "It says the light is fading. The roots are cut. If no hand reaches across the dark, we will be forgotten." Morgan felt a lump in her throat. "We heard you, but you are only one ship." "Not for long," she said. "I sent what I found to Fleet Command. They will listen." Claire looked at her. "You are sure?" Morgan thought of Captain Ellis, of the crews on 100 human ships fighting a war they did not start. "Yes," she said. "They will come." A noise outside made them both freeze. Viral stood up fast. His wings spread slightly. His eyes glared toward the cave entrance. "Scouts," Claire whispered. Morgan grabbed her sidearm. She moved to the opening and peeked out. In the distance, black shapes moved across the valley. "Devourers, they found us," she said. Claire grabbed her blade. "Get your people ready. We leave now. But where to? The Obsidian Spire? It is the last place they will expect us to go. It is also where their main hive is forming. That is suicide, maybe. But if we stay here, we die for nothing. If we go there, we might find a way to stop them." Morgan looked at the woman and child, then at Viral, then at Claire. "All right," she said. "I'm with you." They packed quickly. Morgan helped the woman carry the child. Claire strapped the chest to Viral's back again. They left the cave through a back tunnel that opened onto a narrow ledge. Outside, the sky was darker than before, stars hidden. Wind sharp, they moved fast through the ruins. Viral flew low above them. Morgan kept her scanner active. The Devourer scouts were closing in. Halfway to the spire, the ground shook. A massive machine rose from the earth. It looked like a spider made of black metal and red light. It turned toward them. "Run," Claire shouted. They sprinted across broken stone. The machine fired a beam of red energy. It struck the ground behind them and melted everything it touched. Viral roared and dove. He breathed a stream of blue fire that hit the machine's core. It sparked and smoked but did not fall. "More will come," Claire said. "We must reach the spire before dawn." They ran through the night, tired, scared, but together. As the first gray light touched the horizon, they saw it. The Obsidian Spire, a tower of black glass that rose miles into the sky. It pulsed with a sickly red glow. "This is where they feed," Claire said. "This is where they drain the world." Morgan looked at the structure. It felt wrong, like it should not exist. "What do we do now?" "We go inside," she said, "and we find the heart." Morgan nodded. She did not know if they would survive, but she knew one thing. They were no longer alone, and that changed everything. Claire moved through the ruins like a shadow. The Obsidian Spire loomed ahead, its black surface drinking the weak morning light. Beside her, Morgan kept pace, her boots crunching softly on broken stone. Behind them, the woman and child stayed close to Viral, who walked with his head low and his wings half spread. He growled under his breath but made no loud sound. They had reached the outer ring of the spire. The ground here was smooth and cold. No plants grew. No insects moved. Even the wind seemed to avoid this place. The air tasted bitter like metal and old fire. Claire stopped and held up a hand. Morgan froze. From her belt, Claire took a small vial filled with silver dust. She sprinkled it on the ground. The dust glowed faintly, then turned black and fell apart. "Warded," she whispered. "They have sealed the entrance with Devourer magic." Morgan looked at the massive doors ahead. They were made of fused bone and dark crystal. No handle, no lock, just a smooth surface that pulsed slowly like a heartbeat. How do we get in? Claire studied the doors. Then she looked at Viral. He stepped forward and pressed his snout against the surface. A low hum came from deep in his chest. The doors shivered but did not open. They know his magic, she said. They have blocked it. Morgan frowned. She pulled out her scanner and ran it over the surface. The device beeped once, then went silent. Its screen cracked. They do not like tech either. Claire nodded. Then she looked at Morgan. Your people build things that burn, that break, that do not need magic. Can you break this? Morgan thought for a moment. I have a plasma charge, small, meant for cutting through hulls. It might work. Do it. Morgan took a small disc from her pack. She placed it on the seam between the doors. She set the timer and stepped back. Everyone moved behind a fallen pillar. The charge hissed, then exploded with a sharp crack. Smoke rose. When it cleared a hole the size of a man's head had opened in the door. Jagged edges glowed red-hot. It worked, Morgan said. But the sound, Claire said. They both looked around. In the distance, shapes began to move. Devari scouts, drawn by the noise. We have minutes, she said. Maybe less. Go, she told the woman and child. Stay behind Varel. Do not look back. They entered the spire through the hole. Inside it was dark and warm. The walls were smooth and wet. Veins of red light pulsed through them like blood. The floor sloped downward into deeper darkness. Claire led the way with her blade drawn. It glowed brighter the farther they went. Morgan followed with her sidearm ready. Viral came last, his claws clicking softly on the stone. The tunnel opened into a large chamber. In the center floated a sphere of black crystal. It spun slowly and made a sound like whispering voices. Around it stood tall devourer drones. They did not move. They only watched. Claire signaled for silence. They moved along the wall, staying in the shadows. The air grew heavier. Morgan felt dizzy. Her thoughts blurred. Claire touched her arm. She held up a small leaf and pressed it under Morgan's nose. The sharp scent cleared her head. Mind trap, she whispered. Do not listen. They passed the chamber and entered a narrower hall. This one led upward. Stairs carved from black glass spiraled into the heights of the spire. Why are we going up? Morgan asked softly. Because the heart is not below, she said. It is above. Where they gather the stolen magic. Where they feed the hive. They climbed for what felt like hours. The stairs twisted and turned. Sometimes they passed windows that looked out over the dead land. Sometimes they heard screams that were not real. Finally, they reached a wide platform at the top. The ceiling was open to the sky. In the center stood a pillar of white stone. It was cracked and stained with red. Around it floated dozens of orbs like the one in the archive chest, but these were dark, empty. This is the source, Claire said. The ley core. It once gave life to all Eldros. Now they drain it. Morgan saw wires and tubes running from the pillar into the walls. They pulsed with the same red light. Can we stop it? Claire walked to the pillar and placed her hand on it. She closed her eyes. Tears ran down her face. It is still alive, she said, but barely. Varel came forward and touched the pillar with his snout. A soft blue light spread from his scales into the stone. The pillar glowed for a moment, then dimmed again. He gave it strength, but it is not enough. Morgan looked at the tubes. If we cut them, it might slow them. But the queen is deeper, in the lower levels. She controls the flow. Then we go down. Claire shook her head. Not yet. They expect us to attack the queen. That is the trap. The real danger is here. If they fully drain the core, the whole planet will die in a day. No magic, no life, not even air. So what do we do? Seal it, she said. We lock the core so they cannot take more. But to do that, I must stay. No, Morgan said. We find another way. There is no other way. The seal requires a sentinel. Blood and breath. I am the last. Morgan grabbed her arm. You are not alone anymore. We came here together. We leave together. Claire looked at her, then at Viral, then at the woman and child who huddled near the wall. Maybe, she said softly. She walked to the pillar and placed both hands on it. She began to chant in the old tongue. The words were soft but filled the space. The pillar glowed brighter. The red tubes flickered. Varel stepped beside her and added his voice. A deep rumble that shook the floor. The blue light spread up the pillar and into the ceiling. Morgan saw the devourer drones below begin to move. They were coming. She pulled out her last plasma charge. I will hold them. No, Claire said without opening her eyes. You must go. Tell your people what you saw. Tell them the devourers do not just kill. They consume souls. I am not leaving you. You must. Morgan looked at the woman and child, then at Viral, who watched her with golden eyes. She made a choice. She ran to the edge of the platform and fired her sidearm into the air. The shot echoed like thunder. Then she shouted in a loud, clear voice, "Hey, you metal ghosts, come get me." The drones turned. They began to climb. Morgan ran to the stairs and fired again. She led them away from the pillar, down into the lower halls. She knew she could not fight them all, but she could buy time. Back on the platform, Claire finished the chant. The pillar sealed with a flash of white light. The red tubes went dark. The spire shuddered. Far below, the drones stopped moving. Confused, "It is done," she whispered. Varel nudged her. She leaned on him. She was weak but alive. Then a sound came from below. Not devourers. Human voices. Morgan appeared at the top of the stairs with 2 Marines behind her. They had followed her signal. "We are not leaving anyone," she said. Claire looked at her. "You came back. Always." The Marines helped the woman and child. Varel carried the chest again. They moved fast down the stairs and out through the hole in the door. Outside, the sky was clear for the first time in weeks. Stars shone bright. In orbit, the Persephone waited. But more ships were coming. Human ships. Lights blinking in the dark. Captain Ellis stood on the bridge and watched the feed from the surface. He saw Claire and Morgan walking side by side. He saw the dragon with wings spread wide. He saw hope where there should be none. He opened a channel to Fleet Command. "Tell them we found them," he said. "Tell them they are not alone." On the ground, Claire looked up at the sky. She saw the first human warship break through the clouds. It was big and scarred and beautiful. "Who are they?" she asked. "Our friends," Morgan said. Claire smiled. For the first time in a long time, it reached her eyes. They thought no help would come, but it did. And now they had a chance to fight back. Together. The human fleet gathered in the shadow of Eldros's dead moon. Over 30 ships hung in silent formation. Their hulls bore the scars of many battles. Some were carriers. Some were destroyers. All carried the same symbol, a circle with rays like the sun. They waited for orders. Aboard the flagship Ares Command, Morgan stood with Captain Ellis and Claire in the war room. A large screen showed the obsidian spire from orbit. Red markers pulsed around it. Devourer activity was high. More ships had arrived from the outer rim. Big ones. Hive carriers. "We have one shot," Captain Ellis said. "If we hit them hard and fast, we might break their hold on the core." Claire studied the map. The spire is not just a weapon. It is a heart. If we destroy it without care, the whole planet could collapse. "Then we do not destroy it," Morgan said. "We take it. How be cutting the hive from the inside? We go in, shut down the nexus, and hold it until your people can lock it down from orbit." Captain Ellis rubbed his jaw. "That is a suicide run," maybe she said. "But it is the only way." Claire looked at Morgan. "You would lead this, I have to. I know the layout. And I have something they do not expect." "What is that?" "Me. And you. And Varel." A silence fell. Then Captain Ellis nodded. "All right. We launch in 6 hours. Marines will drop under cover of an ion storm. You go in first. Mark the targets. We follow." They left the war room and walked to the hangar. Varel waited there, curled around the stone chest. He lifted his head when he saw them. His scales gleamed under the ship lights. "He has been fed and rested," Claire said. "He is ready." Morgan knelt beside him. "You remember the plan." Varel made a low sound like a hum. Then he touched his snout to her shoulder. It was his way of saying yes. Back in the ready room, they prepared. Morgan wore light combat armor with a helmet that linked to the fleet net. Claire refused human armor, but accepted a comms band woven with silver thread. It would let her speak to Morgan without words. The woman and child from the caves were safe on a medical frigate. They would stay there until the battle ended. As the hours passed, Morgan checked her gear again and again. She did not feel fear. She felt purpose. Beside her, Claire sat quietly, sharpening her blade with a smooth stone. Her eyes were calm. "Do you believe we can win?" Morgan asked. Claire looked up. "I do not know, but I know we must try. If we fail, Eldros dies. If we win, maybe others live. Others like your people, like all people." The call came sooner than expected. Sensors picked up a massive energy surge from the spire. The Devourers were preparing to drain the core completely. They had hours, not days. "Launch now," Captain Ellis ordered. Morgan and Claire ran to the drop shuttle. Viral followed on foot, then leapt into the cargo bay just before the doors closed. The shuttle lifted fast and joined a line of others streaking toward the planet. The ion storm hit as they entered the atmosphere. Lightning flashed around them. The ride was rough, but the storm hid their approach. No devourer ships rose to meet them. They landed in a dry riverbed 2 miles from the spire. Marines poured out and formed up. Morgan led the way with Claire at her side and Varel above. They moved through the ruins under cover of thunder. The spire glowed brighter than before. Red light pulsed from its peak like a warning. At the outer wall, Morgan signaled the team to stop. She pointed to a vent near the base. It was small but big enough for her and Claire. "You sure about this?" she asked. Claire nodded. "The old tunnels run beneath it. They lead to the Nexus chamber. Go. We hold the perimeter." Claire and Morgan slipped inside. Varel stayed outside and took to the sky. His job was to draw fire. The tunnel was dark and narrow. They crawled for what felt like forever. Then the ground opened into a wide shaft. They climbed down using old handholds carved into the stone. At the bottom they found a door. It was sealed but not warded. Claire pressed her palm to it and whispered a word. The door opened. Inside was the Nexus. The chamber was huge. In the center floated the Queen. She was not like the drones. She was tall and elegant, with limbs like glass and eyes like dying stars. Around her spun orbs of stolen magic. Each one held the voice of a lost world. "You are too late," the Queen said. Her voice was many voices. "Eldros is ours." "Not while I breathe," Claire said. The Queen turned. She saw Morgan and smiled. "Flesh and fire, you bring your doom with you." Morgan raised her rifle. "We bring your end." The fight began. Drones poured from the walls. Morgan fired short bursts. Each shot found its mark. Claire moved like wind. Her blade cut through metal and shadow. Viral crashed through the ceiling above and breathed blue fire that made the Queen scream. But the Queen was strong. She reached into the stolen orbs and pulled out waves of dark energy. It knocked Morgan back. It made Claire fall to her knees. "You cannot win," the Queen said. "All worlds fall." "Not this one," Claire said. She stood and threw her blade. It struck the Queen's chest but did not kill her. The Queen laughed. Then she reached for the core beneath the chamber. One touch and Eldros would die. "No," Morgan shouted. She threw her last plasma charge not at the Queen but at the floor beneath her. The explosion broke the platform. The Queen fell into the dark below. The chamber shook. Cracks spread through the walls. "We have to go," Morgan said. "Not yet." Claire ran to the core. It was a sphere of white light deep in the floor. She placed her hands on it and began to chant. "What are you doing, sealing it for good? It will take all I have." Morgan grabbed her arm. "No, not like this." Claire looked at her. "You said we leave together. But some things must be paid for." Before Morgan could argue, the ceiling above them exploded. Human Marines rappelled down firing. Captain Ellis was with them. "Get them out," he shouted. Marines grabbed Morgan and pulled her back. She fought, but they held her. Claire looked at her one last time and smiled. "Go," she said. Then the light from the core flared white and filled the chamber. Outside, Varel roared. The spire cracked from top to bottom. Red light bled out and faded. The Marines dragged Morgan to the surface. She looked back as the ground collapsed behind them. The spire fell in on itself and became dust. In orbit, the human fleet fired one final volley. The remaining devourer ships broke apart and drifted away. It was over. Morgan stood in the ruins, breathing hard. Varel landed beside her and lowered his head. Tears ran down her face. Then a hand touched her shoulder. She turned. Claire stood there, covered in dust, but alive. Weak but alive. "You came back," she said. "Always," Morgan said. Above them, the sky cleared. Stars shone bright. And from the dark beyond the system, more human ships emerged, lights blazing like hope reborn. They thought no help would come, but it did. And now they had a future to build. Together. The silence after the battle was deeper than any Claire had known. Not the silence of fear or loss, but the quiet that comes after a storm has passed. The air no longer tasted of ash. The wind carried the faint scent of rain. Far to the east, a single green shoot pushed through the cracked earth. She sat on a broken stone near the ruins of the old watchtower. Her body ached. Her hands were raw, but her heart was steady. Beside her, Viral lay curled like a cat in the sun. His scales still smoked from the fire he had breathed. His eyes were closed, but his tail flicked gently when she touched his side. Morgan walked up the slope with 2 cups of hot broth. She handed one to Claire and sat down without a word. They watched the sky together. Human ships moved in slow patterns above the planet. Some were repairing orbital stations. Others scanned the land for hidden threats. None left. "You should be resting," Morgan said. "So should you." They smiled. It was small but real. Down in the valley, crews worked to clear the rubble, elves and humans side by side. The woman and child from the caves had returned. They helped sort through old stores and plant seeds in clean soil. Other survivors came out of hiding. Some walked for days just to see the sky without smoke. The devourers were gone, their hive broken, their queen lost in the dark below the spire. The stolen magic had returned to the earth. Slowly the land began to heal. Captain Ellis visited that evening. He stood tall, but his voice was softer than before. "Fleet Command has made a decision," he said. "We are staying. Not as occupiers, as partners. We will help rebuild, and we will learn." Claire looked at him. "Why? Because you showed us something we forgot," he said. "That war is not the only answer. That some things are worth protecting, not for power, but for beauty." She nodded. "That is the way of Eldros. It will be the way of Saul, too." After he left, Morgan turned to Claire. "What will you do now?" "I do not know," she said. "I was a sentinel. My duty was to guard. Now there is peace." "What does a guard do in peace?" "You teach," Morgan said. "You show us how to listen to the land, how to live with it, not on it." Claire thought about that. Then she looked at Varel. He opened one eye and gave a soft puff of smoke. "Maybe," she said. Days turned into weeks. The first rain fell. It washed the black from the stones and filled the dry rivers. In the center of the valley, humans built a new camp, not with steel and wire, but with wood and woven reeds. Elves taught them how to shape the trees without killing them. Humans showed elves how to purify water with light and heat. Claire and Morgan walked the land every morning. They mapped the ley lines that ran beneath the soil. They found places where magic still slept and woke it with song and touch. Virel flew above them and sang in his own way, a deep hum that made flowers bloom in his shadow. One evening they stood on the ridge where Claire had first seen the human fleet. The stars were bright. The moon was full. "Do you think they will come back?" Morgan asked. The devourers. Claire was quiet for a long time. "Yes," she said, "but not soon. And next time we will be ready, you and me, elves and humans, dragons and ships. We are stronger together." Morgan looked at her. "I never believed in magic before. And now I think maybe it was just another kind of science we did not understand." Claire laughed. It was the first real laugh Morgan had heard from her. In the months that followed, the alliance grew. A council was formed. Elves and humans sat together under open skies. They shared stories. They shared food. They shared pain. The archive chest was opened and its contents copied onto human data crystals and elven memory stones. Knowledge flowed both ways. Virel became a symbol. Children followed him through the fields. He let them climb on his back and touch his wings. He never growled, only purred. Claire took on new students, young elves who had never held a blade, young humans who had never heard a star song. She taught them balance. She taught them respect. She taught them that strength is not just in fire but in stillness. Morgan stayed too. She turned down a promotion to stay on Eldros. She said her work was not done. Captain Ellis understood. He left her a shuttle and a comlink that would always reach home. One morning as the sun rose over the green hills, Claire stood with Morgan and Virel on the highest point of Mount Vera. Below them the new settlement bustled with life. Smoke rose from chimneys. Voices carried on the wind. Laughter. They thought no help would come. She said. But it did. Morgan finished. And it stayed. Virel spread his wings and let out a long, low call. It echoed across the land and into the sky. Far above, a human patrol ship turned toward the sound and blinked its lights in reply. Claire placed a hand on Morgan's shoulder. "Thank you. For what? For hearing us. For coming. For staying." Morgan covered Claire's hand with her own. "Thank you for trusting us." They stood there as the day grew warm. The wind moved through their hair. The land breathed beneath their feet. The stars watched from afar. The war was over. But the story was just beginning. And this time it would be written not in blood but in hope. Not in silence, but in many voices joined as one. In the years to come, ships from Sol would carry elven seeds to other worlds. Elven songs would echo in human halls. Human hands would help raise new spires not of obsidian, but of living crystal. And wherever they went, they would remember the day help came from the dark. They thought no help would come. Then humanity's fleet emerged from the dark and changed everything.